What I mean by redemption is that it's more than getting over it. It's bringing something beautiful out of what looks like a disaster. So,
welcome to the SGV Master Key, a show where you will hear personal stories of triumph over failures and how others successfully navigated the unique landscape that is the San Gabriel Valley. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we have chosen the San Gabriel Valley for our home or businesses or both. We believe it is the people and small businesses that make this community great, and we love to share their stories with you. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at sgvmasterkey.com. Here are the hosts for the show, Russell Mono and Scott Warmoth.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the SGV Master Key. Thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate you spending this time with us. And today, we get a lot of guests who have children, but we haven't really, gone deep into what that's like. And you have children, right, Scott?
I have children. Of course, it was the greatest experience of my life, to have children and to raise them. It's such an important thing. And you've got a very young child yourself, and you have to start thinking, how do I raise my child? How do I teach and train and, bring them into the world? It's a very solemn, very important responsibility.
Sure. And I think getting advice and guidance from people who have been there before is really important, as well as trying to find your own way. But I want to be very careful not to reduce anybody just to being a caretaker or a parent, because they still exist as their own person. And today's guest is a mother, a friend, and an educator. So many titles. But Beth, welcome to the show.
thank you, Russell. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We hear the voice of your daughter every time we do a show, and we
Yes.
have the help of another one of your daughters with every show in terms of production.
Yeah, it feels like family here.
Yes, we're all family.
So I introduced you as many titles. Another one I forgot was Linguist. But of those titles, which one do you represent as yourself mostly?
Oh, I'm still mostly in the role of mom.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you have how many children?
I have 6, 5 living in our house, one that's married with her own kids, and then we've got 3 in heaven that we're looking forward to meeting and maybe raising in heaven.
Wow.
Not sure how it works.
So that's that in and of itself is quite special and remarkable, and I want to really get into what that's like. And I mentioned before that you home educated them, and that's another topic to get into. But so I want to go deeper into those topics. Your name is Beth Ahlers, and I failed to mention that in the beginning. But Beth, where does your story begin?
Well, I actually was named Elizabeth Ann Wong, and my mom said, Elizabeth has 21 different derivational nicknames, and so you can pick whatever you want to be called. But she always called me Beth. So Beth means house, and that's going to be my theme today.
Okay.
Is house.
So where are you originally from? Southern California?
Yes, I was born in Hollywood at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital. We lived in LA, probably not too far from that hospital. And when I was 3, we moved to Glendale. And now we live in Montrose.
And so many people that have been on this show have had a journey of immigrant parents. Were your parents born here?
My parents were born here, both in Los Angeles. My grandmother on my mother's side she was also born here, I think in Los Angeles. And her mother was born in China, Canton, we're Cantonese. Her mother started in San Francisco, and they got married And 1906, a big earthquake and fire scared them to death, so they ran down to Los Angeles. They started an American-style restaurant around Olvera Street.
Oh.
And had 14 kids. So my grandmother was one of 14. And they had a front house and a back house, a house for the boys and a house for the girls, and they fed them all through the restaurant.
Wow, that is really fascinating. Down, were they in Chinatown, close to Olvera Street, or?
Yeah, they were close to Olvera Street.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of the restaurant?
I don't know.
It's not in existence anymore?
No, I think at the time of the Depression, it disappeared, and they went out of business, or the construction happened because they can't find the site anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, but my grandmother always said we had apple pie and violin live music.
Wow, what a different era there.
Mm-hmm.
Philippe's would have been around then, huh?
I believe so. Yeah, I think that was turn of the century.
Right.
Yeah, so that was also at that time there were some Italian restaurants. There was a real famous old Italian restaurant, Little Joe's, I think was the name of it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Wow, so 14 kids your great-grandparents had. Your grandma was one of 14. Wow. And so did your family remain in the Los Angeles area?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so where does your journey go from there? When does Beth come in?
Let's see. Well, Beth came in 1967.
And what was childhood like here for you in Southern California?
Let's see. We were 3 years old when we moved to Glendale. And the neighborhoods and the schools were pretty much all Caucasian. So we went to Caucasian church too. So I don't think I really realized that I looked different. I'm Chinese. That I looked different than everybody else. But until going to school, and then people would say things.
Oh no! So do you speak Cantonese?
No, not too much. Just like the family terms, food items.
So what was that experience like when you were aware that you looked different?
I think I felt like a little bit confused, and there was something I could tell that my family culture was different from out there, because I felt a little bit unsure of how to behave out there, but language-wise, I didn't have a problem.
Do you feel you grew up in a family that was following Chinese customs and habits?
Well, it's interesting because our family has been in California for 4 generations, 3 generations through my grandfathers. So very Americanized, but they all stayed in Chinese community. So that's like a subset of Chinese culture, because it's Chinese American culture. So actually in college, I went to Taiwan to teach English for a summer, and while I was looking forward to like feeling like, oh, I'll really feel Chinese there. But then they all look at me and they say, you're not real Chinese. So it's one of those things where
oh no.
Did
you have a moment when you're like, where do I fit in?
Well, after that college experience, then I realized, okay, well, I've just got to settle down, figure out how God put me together, because my life, my circumstances, my heritage are particular only to me. And so it does seem like everywhere I go, I just kind of stand out in some way, which is part of my house theme too.
So you grew up in Glendale, and you went to Taiwan, not for college, but during college. Where did you go to college?
I went to UCLA.
And what did you study there?
I studied linguistics.
So are you still doing linguistics now? Have you done linguistics since UCLA?
Well, I use parts of it all the time. A lot of it is really communication.
What is the study of linguistics?
Oh, it's fun. I like it because it's a combination of solving puzzles and putting clues together and communication. So it's looking at words, it's looking at grammar, it's looking at sentences, it's looking at sounds. So it goes from, you could go from phonetics, which is the sounds, individual sounds, to morphology, which is the building of the words, to grammar, the building of the sentences, its syntax. And then semantics is the meaning. So there's all levels that you could go into with linguistics. And it was really fun having all my kids grow up and watching their language development, because you can look at linguistics for your own native language that you're born into, and watch how children develop their language abilities, and also cross-culturally, obviously with other languages and other cultures.
So you can track what is etymology?
That's connected to morphology, but it's also meaning. So meaning in the parts of the words. So you can look at the history of where maybe 3 letters of the word together, they come from Latin and it can mean this, and then you put it together with another 3 letters that is another word from maybe French.
Greek.
Right. But when you put them together and then you use them in English, it has like a whole different world of nuance.
So how do you, what does linguistics mean to you, on a daily basis? Are you always breaking down sentences, looking at words, or how do you use it?
Well, lately, language has been changing a lot, and people have been using words that are very familiar to us in new ways. And sometimes, so I don't know if I could think of examples right now, but the word usage is also part of linguistics. And so as I'm listening to the news or listening to my kids communicating about social media, and their usage of language is very interesting linguistically, because they're taking the same words that Noah Webster may have put in his dictionary in 1828, but they're using it in a totally different way, which is entertaining as well as sometimes it's frustrating because we go, okay, to be politically correct, can I use this word anymore?
Well, so you're speaking about your children, and that's something that I really want to get into. But before getting into that, did you know you wanted to both have children and educate them, or how did that come about?
Yes, I always knew I wanted to have children. When I was probably in junior high, I read a biography of Susanna Wesley, and she really inspired me. I think she had maybe 17 children, and it was her stories of how she ran her household and educated them and raised them and kept her sanity was very inspiring. And I've just always thought it would be really fun to have a big family, because I only have one sibling and my husband only has one sibling. So we both felt that having one sibling is great. It would have been, a lot of fun to have more. So both Ron and I, we really wanted to have a bigger family.
Wow. 17 kids and keeping her sanity.
The story I remember about her the most is that when she needed to be alone, she would take her apron and lift it over her head. And that was the signal to everybody, leave mom alone. So sometimes the only place I could get away by myself was the bathroom, and they're still knocking on the door. But I always remember that story. She only had an apron.
Well, so all the mothers here I'm sure can relate, and I know how difficult it is even with one.
Well, you grew up, yeah, but you Beth grew up with just one sibling, but your family history seemed to indicate there were a lot of, big families going up the line. So was yours, unusual in your family that there were only two of you?
Well, generationally, things were changing. So I think after the generation that had 14, they thought, okay, that's too much. And so my grandmother had lots of siblings, and then my parents had a lot of cousins. But my parents' generation went down to just two, and my dad's two sisters both had none. So cousin-wise, I didn't have any siblings on my dad's side, and just a few on my mom's side. And so I think since when I was really little, there were lots of extended family, and then through the years, they kind of, moved farther away, didn't stay in touch so much. And so by the time my brother and I were high school and college, it was getting lonely. So then I thought, well, when I have my family, I think it's time to build them up again.
So you have 6 children, but perhaps 9 children you've had.
Yes.
That's amazing. I mean, because today you don't see many families of that size.
Right.
And then somehow you've been able to overcome a lot during your life, it sounds like. I mean, some of the experiences that maybe we'll be going into. How did you find the peace and the sort of tranquility in your life that you seem to still have?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, as far as the family goes, every time you have a baby, you never know what's coming. You don't know if how the baby's going to turn out, and the rest of your life is going to be changed forever, right? And so that's just like a big example of everything in our life, that we can't control what the outcome is going to be. And so our life is full of anxiety, and it's faith in God, knowing that my life is in His good hands, that He loves me and has the best for me and for my family. And I know, and I ask Him all the time, I say, Lord, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about that? And when God and I work together, I know that He's going to have my back, and it'll be okay. And through the hard times, I say, oh, all right, Lord, what are you doing through this? What are you doing through this? Because I know that the pattern in my life has been that God works all things out for good somehow. And it's not always the outcome that I would want, but there's redemption in everything. With God, there's always redemption.
So you believe that you may make mistakes, but you'll get over it.
I'll get over it. I'll learn from it. And other people, like my kids, will learn from it. And what I mean by redemption is that it's more than getting over it. It's bringing something beautiful out of what looks like a disaster. So Isaiah, I think it's in Isaiah, says, from ashes comes beauty.
Oh. If you haven't already noticed, Beth is a person of faith, a Christian, and we met and we became friends through the church. There was an event where they had people who ran life groups, and you would go and talk to them and sign up. And I had walked back and forth maybe 2 or 3 times trying to figure out where I wanted to go, and it didn't feel, none of them felt welcoming, as odd as that may seem, right, at church. And I remember Beth smiled at me, and I felt, okay, like at least someone here has acknowledged me walking back and forth by myself. So that's where we first met, and we did life group and many other things together. And I remember distinctly, well, first learning that she had so many children, but when you are around them, how different that felt. There was something very different. And if I had to name some of that, it was that they all seemed to be able to carry themselves around adults very differently than other children their age. That was very unique, and I picked up on that immediately, and then I've got to know and spend some time with them, and they work with the show. But I would say that's a product specifically due to you, right? So you have not only had 6 children, but you also have home educated each one of them.
Yes, I say they've been home educated from birth. Because even from the moment of conception, their spirit is precious and beautiful. And so at the first one, I learned to speak to the child in the womb and get to know the child. So the first one was Rebecca, and talk to her and pray for her and pray with her and sing to her. And then when they're born, you look right in their eyes and you have this person-to-person communication that, though they might not understand English yet, they understand communication of the heart and emotions and facial expressions. And so building the bonding from the beginning is the beginning of education.
I imagine some listeners right now are thinking, wow, okay, 6 children is really tough, but now, home educating 6 children, they may not have any idea of what that's like. And there's a lot of that going on right now, either by choice or by force, right? And so I know a lot of people have been really overwhelmed with this being thrust upon them if they didn't choose it. But I think the listeners would like to hear what that was like. Did you always know you were going to home educate your kids?
I didn't know it was possible at the beginning, but actually I did. Yeah, it was actually before I was married, maybe before I met my husband. I just happened upon a seminar going on at church about homeschooling, and I thought, wow, that's a great idea. I didn't know it was possible, because my parents always told me that I would say, Mom, I don't want to go to school today. And she would always say, if you don't go to school, they're going to put me in jail. So I always thought, it's like you have to go to school or you go to jail. And so when I had my own kids, I started researching. I'd sit in the rocking chair, nursing them, and read books about how other people were doing it. And some of what I read was from Charlotte Mason in 1842. She was training governesses in England at the time on how to train children and educate children in homes, because that's the way they did it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the name Charlotte Mason because of my wife, but a lot of people think homeschool and they think public school, but at home at the kitchen table. Like that, it's the same curriculum, but you just start doing it at home, and the parent is essentially operating as the teacher would in school, public school. But that may be one version, but there are so many different versions of homeschooling, right? And so how would you describe your version or what you did?
Yeah, what we did was, one of Charlotte Mason's mottos was, education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. So it's very holistic, and it's all about being at home together as a family and learning through living your life together. And when they're very little, they don't need anything formal, because as you talk to them and read picture books to them, they're learning language. And as you put on their socks and shoes, you can count their toes, and that just becomes very natural. Like here's your French fries, 5 French fries on your plate for lunch. You go for walks in nature, and you say, the sky, it's so beautiful. How big is it? It's such a beautiful blue sky. And look at these leaves. It's fall time, and we can color the leaf patterns onto a piece of paper. Did you guys remember doing that?
Yeah.
And so when they're young, they're learning, when they learn about creation and the things that God has made in our world, that's science. And they just keep on growing in their interest in it. Children love to touch and feel and smell, use all of their senses to learn. And then it develops the curiosity in them to figure out, now there's this kind of tree and there's this kind of tree. And there's these leaves are like this and these leaves are like this. And then you can name them. This is a palmate kind of leaf. And the differences in flowers and then animals. And so a lot of homeschooling for us was developing in them a love of learning. A love of learning about people, a love of learning about stories. So history is all stories. A love of learning about language and music and song and colors and art and shapes, and it's all connected. It doesn't need to be segmented into six different hours.
Now it sounds like you had, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, a traditional education.
Yes.
And you graduated from UCLA, and I don't know if you went to graduate school.
Yes.
But was that a positive experience for you or otherwise?
I think it was pretty mediocre. So when I heard about homeschooling, I thought, oh, I could do it so much better than my experience, because we spent so many hours in the classroom not learning. It was busy work, or it was classroom management because the other children weren't focused, or it was repetitive where it didn't need to be. It was testing things that actually weren't taught. And so how can you learn something that's not taught to you before you take the test? That's not fair. And so I thought I can do this so much more efficiently. And so our homeschool turned out to be very relaxed, very low pressure, because they're learning and absorbing in only 2 or 3 hours. And so I don't remember what the question was.
Well, that's okay. I have another one. So can everybody homeschool? I mean, you have a certain intelligence, and I don't know that everybody has that certain intelligence. Is homeschooling something anybody can do? Can you trust it to anybody? I mean, earlier, you just talking about leaves, you used the word palmate, which I don't know what that means, but obviously you have a certain, intelligence about you. I believe you would know how to teach a child. But does everybody really have that skill? I
don't know, but there's a lot of resources out there for help, and every parent that has the concern for their children to develop and expand to the potential that God's put in them will be able to help their child, and God will make a way. Sometimes for us, we did have my dad who helped with math. He would come over twice a week and spend half an hour to an hour with each child. I don't know, was it that much, Tori? And so that was a real gift to me, because I really wouldn't be able to have kept up with the math. And but there's videos, and there's homeschool groups. That we have a homeschool group that's a co-op, so all the parents contribute in some way, and sometimes it's teaching biology. One of the moms is a doctor, and so she taught our high school biology class.
So there would be groups of people that can contribute different resources or skills or knowledge.
Yes, and from the 1980s until now, there's become such a big abundance of books and curriculum that's written specifically for use at home. So there's a lot of resources and a lot of choices, and for different styles. So I have a very relaxed style. I like to be very eclectic, but there's curriculums that guide the mom all the way through. Use this book for 10 minutes, have them write on this page, and then go on to this book, and spelled out very clearly like a recipe.
So you would have there would be times when formal education is used in a homeschooling environment.
Yes, probably 5th grade gets a little more formal, where they need to write out a paragraph and sit still for half an hour, and then take a break. If they haven't gotten done by then, I'd say, let's work on it tomorrow.
Well, I know Russell and I have talked at times about the educational system that exists today, and it seems that it was designed for the Industrial Revolution and not contemporary purposes.
Right.
Would you think it's best that we disrupt the formal educational system as it exists today? And would homeschooling be something that, do you think, should be a universal application?
I think it's healthy for the children to not have so much stress. The school system's become very stressful without them learning a lot.
Yes.
Or not learning very well, or learning things that are actually not healthy for them to be learning.
Yeah.
So
This is exactly the sentiment of every high school person that I work with. They're burned out. They have lost their interest in learning. They have forgotten everything that they've been forced to learn over the years, and they're not very hopeful for a fulfilling future.
Yeah, I mean, I happen to think you're making great points, and I just really believe what you're saying. I mean, I think of my own experience. I was a good achiever, high achiever, but by the time I got to high school, I didn't care. I would skip class, I wouldn't go. And I was in Catholic schools, which are very rigid and strict, but I got away with it. And it seemed that my education was probably more, what I wanted to teach myself, mm-hmm. rather than, just sitting there receiving it. And so it didn't work. And actually, by the time I got to college, I was completely done with traditional education, and I didn't have a traditional college education. It just seems, in your case, you're talking about like a very loving, supportive environment.
Because we're growing people.
Right.
We're not just filling an empty bag with pieces of facts.
Right.
We're growing people.
Right.
Yeah, uh-huh.
But what I keep getting back to is not everybody is like you. Not everybody can understand or understand the richness of what it means to grow a person, or, have that kind of attitude. So how can you get to the point where, there's a better system?
I don't know. I think right now we have to start with families, start with parents who are concerned for their children, having been not allowed to go to school in person, and after COVID, and having difficulties with online. And so right where we are right now at this point in Southern California, and these families, I have this conversation a lot with my circle of friends on how to reach these struggling parents who were not ever wanting to homeschool, but they're being forced into it in this pandemic situation. And some kids do well online, some kids don't do well online. A lot of kids, like our cousin he finally gets to go back in person this week. And not all the kids are, but his his parents were like, he needs to get back in person because all he does is on a screen all day. So even if it's not school, he's playing screen games. That's the only way he can play with his friends. So that's not healthy for them. And so I don't know how to change the system. It's so big and comprehensive. It may take a generation of children, maybe the children that are coming through this pandemic, and they're seeing that there's got to be another way, there's got to be a better way. My experience was so difficult when I was in school. Let's change it. And they may be the generation who will take the risk to do something different.
I think the failure of our education system is making parents believe that they can't do it. And I think because I homeschool, or my wife homeschools our kids, that the most important thing is that they care to know their child, and that they know their child the best, and they can facilitate learning. They don't necessarily have to know everything to help the children discover for themselves. And I think a lot of people feel like I'm not smart enough, or I don't have enough education in every area to be able to teach my child. But if they're shown that you just need to have an interest in your child, a real interest, and you care about them, which most parents do, then you're qualified. You can help facilitate
all
it.
you have to do, is facilitate the curiosity of the child, because the child will drive themselves, great distances,
Right.
because they're naturally curious. And I think they're naturally curious. I'm not sure.
Well, until sometimes they're curious until they go to school,
Yeah.
and then they figure out,
Then it's deadened.
Learning is boring. I only like recess.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
recess is where they're able to be themselves and expand in the ways that they want to. That they can play this game, or they can read a book, or they can sit by themselves, or they can be in a circle and do ring around the rosy, something. So that's where they can express the way they want to learn and grow. So there is that guidance that they need, but it is the key that when the parent can recognize what is the bent of this child, which direction do they naturally really want to go, and build on that, then the joy of learning comes in.
I'm really curious about what it was like to go through the process. And you had 6 children. I don't know what the age difference is, but how did you handle it all? You must be a great manager, because somehow you've got to provide for all of their needs. And it's, how did you do that? How did you go through that actual day-to-day process? What was it like?
Yeah, well, it is day to day, because every day changes and there's a new challenge. But so let's see. When there's one, I intentionally planned on how I set precedent, because I figured I'm building a family culture. And so all the children that come after this first one are going to learn the family culture and fit themselves into the family culture. So let's intentionally think about how we want it at the beginning. Okay, so I knew if I had multiple people and multiple ages and multiple personalities, in my heart, I want to be all together. So, and that's why I wanted a big family, because I wanted to be together. So how are we going to have all this diversity but be together? So we had to have some kind of structure, like we're going to be at the kitchen table at 8 o'clock, and we're going to have our breakfast. We sit together at breakfast, we clean up breakfast, then we read Bible together and pray together, sing some songs, and then each person will have their own book, and they'll work on their own thing for like half an hour or an hour, depending on their age. Then it's time to go grocery shopping. So we get everybody in the car, go grocery shopping, and they learn a lot in actual errands because we can list off what are the things that we need to buy. What do we want to eat? And then make a list. And how do we find these things when we're in the store? And sometimes when they're a certain age, you could send certain ones to certain aisles and say, all right, you're going to get the cereal, you're going to get the milk. And it becomes a really fun thing, but there's a lot of learning in there and learning in cooperation. So we get home, have lunch, and then there's maybe another hour or two of together learning where I read to them out loud and we have some discussion together, and then little ones can take naps and older ones have independent work, and then everybody goes out to play in the afternoon. Dad comes home and we might do some kind of a movie together that is a biography of somebody or a real life historical event that we can enjoy together.
I have so many things that I want to bring out because I know there's listeners now that may be questioning or doubting or I would say the number one knee-jerk reaction to homeschooling is, what about socialization, right? Mm-hmm. And I already know the answer for this for myself, but what do you say to people who ask that?
Well, I have the example of my daughters who went to UCLA, joined the sorority, and became social VP of the sorority. So they didn't have any problem with socialization. And actually, they're because we're in a family unit with all different ages, they can relate to adults, they can relate to grandparents, they can relate to the babies, the 5-year-olds, the teenagers. The older ones have understanding and learn compassion for the smaller ones who are physically weaker or unable to do certain things, and there's cooperation, and that extends to the whole community. But we had a lot of interaction with our homeschool group and with our church groups and neighbors, and that's all the fun kind of socialization. The kind of socialization that I wanted to avoid was the bullying on the playground, or where everybody's the same age and there's these cliques where people are not allowed to be accepted. Those are negative socializations that I did want my kids to avoid. I wanted them to interact with people in like a real life community situation, different ages, and we're actually living life.
I have a story. We were on our way to Palmdale for the Poppy, or Lancaster for the Poppy event, and I think it may have been Vittle. Vittle asked one of the young girls there, I think she was a friend from up north, what about socialization? And I just sat back. I was like, I'm going to watch this. And she just, I don't remember how old she was, maybe 10 or 11, I think. And she just went off on this really articulate explanation as to why they have all this interaction. And I could see his face just, he couldn't believe it, that this was coming from such a young child.
Well, yeah, and the way you're describing it, the demonstration of it, I mean, really, you're very social. You happen to have a big family, 6 children. You could still have a 1-child or 2-child family, but you're interacting with other homeschooling family, and probably not just homeschool, but, interacting with all kinds of people. So there really is no lack of socialization, but probably, as you say, I mean, you're convincing me. To me, you're just making like a beautiful photo of homeschooling, where you've got a healthy environment because it's family-based and you're socializing with other people, and the negative socializations is so important. No bullying, no, really, I mean, you're a little bit more in control of the situation. Really is, coming off as a very beautiful, very uplifting way, as you say, to grow a human being. Mm-hmm. And I think, skeptics of homeschooling, if they could hear this,
Yes.
would really start to question the skepticism, Yeah, it's quite amazing.
I think people right now may be thinking about, okay, so what's the result? But success is measured in many different ways. But let's take a quick break and we'll come back to that.
The legal process can be intimidating. You don't know where to start and you're unsure of what to expect. The attorneys and staff at the law offices of Scott Warmoth have been serving the San Gabriel Valley for over 35 years, helping people just like you navigate through the legal process and ensuring you're treated fairly. You can find them at law888.com or call 626-282-6868. That's 626-282-6868.
All right, we're back with Beth. Before the break, I was saying people right now may be thinking to themselves, well, okay, that's all nice, but where does that end up? What happens to them after? So I already know, but can you share with the audience? So where did your children, who were all homeschooled by you, what did they end up? How did they end up academically?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I homeschooled that. Well, we started with the first one. She was ready to go on at 16. So we graduated her from high school at 16. She went to Pasadena City College from 16 to 18. She got an AA in political science and a second one probably in humanities, and transferred to UCLA for senior year. Lived in the sorority. She had interest in teaching, so she went for a master's at UCLA. So she has a master's degree in teaching. She taught in a charter school in Los Angeles by the Coliseum, 8th grade. So that was a lot of fun. I remember talking to her when she'd come home and all right, Rebecca, how'd it go? And she'd say, well, they're never quiet, but but we had good lessons. So I was so proud of her. And now she's married. She has two little kids, one little girl and a little boy, 10 months old. And then Abby she did the same pattern of Pasadena City College in art history, transferred to UCLA with art history and a minor in food studies. She did a summer study in Paris, which she totally loved. And so she was 19 when she went to study in Paris. And I was just so proud of her. She did very well on her own and learned and just had a beautiful experience. We got to go meet her, my first time to Europe, to go meet her for that. Right now she's working at a Village Christian School as the head media librarian, and she just did April is Poetry Month, and so she did a beautiful month-long program with the students. I'm bringing poets in to teach them how to present a poetry reading, and she had 20 students come this week to read their poems before the teachers, the staff, and their parents, and had awards and things like that. So she's very successful. I'm so happy for her. Then Victoria's over there by the camera. She's
Victoria is our production assistant.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Your editor.
Yeah, so Victoria went to UC San Diego, studied psychology, and then she was not, because of COVID, she wasn't able to go through graduation ceremonies, but we are so proud of her, and we had special things for her, and she's been very, very productive in her time after graduation, though things have been limited. She was interested in graduate school, but has put that off until we see what's going on with the pandemic, when that's going to, how that's going to resolve. And but thank you, Scott, for bringing her on here. She's learning
And she does
a
a
lot.
great job for us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we get nothing really but compliments for, our podcast and video.
Yeah,
And
she makes it very easy. Like basically we come here and we speak, and what comes out the other end is a really polished product. So
So proud of you, Tori. So part of the results of homeschooling that gratifies my heart is to see that they can learn new skills that I couldn't teach her how to do this, but she can learn new skills because she knows how to learn, and she enjoys learning, and knows how to interact with people who can teach her. And then let's see, after Tori is Priscilla. Priscilla is the voice of
yeah, anytime you
announcements.
hear our intro or outro or the commercial,
yes,
it's Priscilla.
Yes. So Priscilla is preparing to go to Marine Officer, what is it called? Candidate school this summer, 10 weeks in Virginia. She's been very diligent in her physical training this past year and got selected to go to Officer Candidate School this summer. She's working on her finishing up her junior year at UCLA in geography. And she really loved a lot of her geography studies at Catalina, studying plants, and I'm not sure everything, but it's beautiful. That's Priscilla. She's 19. And then Ben. So we had 4 girls and then 2 boys. So the 2 boys. So Ben is waiting to hear from Patrick Henry College in Virginia on his application there. So he is 17, and he's working at In-N-Out Burger. He loves that. Priscilla also works at In-N-Out Burger, and they love it there. That was like Priscilla's dream job. She got a dream job, and now she's going on to Marines and has even bigger dreams. So, but Ben's working at In-N-Out, and he's looking forward to going to Patrick Henry College in Virginia.
And does he just wants to go away, that's across the country?
Not particularly. We've kept all our girls close because they all wanted to stay close, but Ben doesn't like studying online, and the schools here in California are still doing mostly online, and even the universities. So although Priscilla's at UCLA, she's really at home with her computer. So that doesn't work for Ben. But this Patrick Henry College in Virginia, they say, yeah, there's plenty of room for him, and they're in person. And Ben took a constitutional literacy class through that college in high school. And his instructor, he loved his instructor, and he's on faculty at that college. So we know that Ben will enjoy it and have a very good mentorship over there. And then Johnny's 14. He's working on his Eagle Scout. So he's my last one homeschooling, and he's very independent. He's very motivated, and I just have to keep checking on him. So right now he is taking the constitutional literacy class online through the same program that Ben took his, and so he's working on his final. I just have to remind him, Johnny, are you working on that? Johnny, are you working on that? But he's very motivated. And then, so he's 14. I'm thinking, 16 or 17, he'll be ready to move into college. But he may start taking some classes as dual enrollment, high school and college at Pasadena City College if they open up in person soon.
I love how you didn't just rattle off like, these are my kids, this is where they went to school. Like, it really shows that you do see them as these full people that are so much more than just, what they've achieved or where they're going or where they've received a degree. A lot of people would expect some sort of answer like that, but you see them as complete people and all that they do and all that they love. So, Beth, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them to the show, and you are the only one who brought more than one. But what did you bring today?
Well, they're all of the same theme, so that's why I brought them. But okay, so I told you my full name is Elizabeth, and my mom's always called me Beth. Now, Elizabeth here means, I got this in Big Bear. It was something that I got for everybody in the family, got one of these name things.
Can you show it to that camera?
Oh, okay. Can you see?
Yeah.
And so I like it because the definition of Elizabeth is encouraging to me. It says, my God is bountiful, God of plenty. And that's how the testimony of my life has been through. So I didn't really talk about the difficulties, but we had financial difficulties. We had physical, medical difficulties. I am still sort of recovering from cancer, but pretty much, very healed. And then we had the children that are in heaven now. But the redemption and the beauty that comes out of the hard times is what these houses are about. This one, I read the back of it. I was looking for it yesterday because I wanted to bring it. And so 1990 is when we were married. And at the back, it actually says, I bought the cross-stitch kit on our honeymoon in San Luis Obispo. And I customized it to a Bible verse that says, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that was the year we got married in 1990. And then I brought these pictures of the house we live in now. It's just so much like this little house that I put together when we first got married. So after 26 years of being married, the Lord gave us this house that fits all of our children, and it's blue. There's the thing about it being blue is very important to me. And the windows are orange. So it's unusual, especially for the arts and crafts style. When we bought the arts and crafts style house, I looked at what are the colors that were typically painted in those years when the houses were new. And I didn't really care for them. The houses looked great, but it wasn't me. But I love blue, and I love bright. But I thought, this is a big house, and right now it's a neutral color that just blends in with the whole neighborhood. And so do I want to stand out with this big blue house? That's quite a risk because it's an expense. And then if you don't like it, or if, everybody's complaining about it in the neighborhood, it's like, too bad. But I did it. I went ahead and did it. And that was a big statement for myself that I always have stood out everywhere I am. I'm different. In the homeschooling community, I'm like one of the most educated homeschooler I know. I do have master's degrees and a doctorate, but I choose to stay home. I have no income, but I'm prosperous. And so this big blue house is like, it's me. I stand out. I'm in a community, the only Asian growing up, but when I'm in a community of 1 billion Chinese people, I feel like I have to stand out. I have to differentiate myself, and I always do somehow. When I'm with UCLA was when I first was surrounded by Asians, a lot more Asians, and I noticed that, okay, when I'm with the Caucasians, I always feel like I'm much more quiet than they are. But then when I'm with the Chinese, I'm so loud compared to them. So anyway, that's my big blue house, is that wherever I go, I seem to stand out. And then this quilt is the same theme of the house, but maybe it's like building the family culture. This is the only quilt that I have almost finished and I've kept. I've finished other quilts, but they've been gifts. But this was the only one that I've kept that it's almost finished. But There's a lot of thought that goes into it to plan out the pieces. There's a big picture of what do you want it to look like in the end. And then there's the work of putting it together, piece by piece, and you build it together, and it becomes a beautiful picture that's totally unique. And house is family, and my name, Beth, means house. Elizabeth is bountiful, God, and Beth is house. It's a place that I've built over. We've been married 31 years now, so that from that time of building that family culture, it's a long-term effort, but it's great to see the fruits of it now.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
When did you make the quilt?
I started the quilt when I just had one child.
Oh my goodness!
Uh-huh.
How old is your oldest child?
She's 25.
Oh, so you started it maybe 25 years ago,
yes,
and finished it when?
Well, I haven't worked on it for a long time. I haven't worked on it for several years, but there's more quilting that can be done up here. Of putting see these quilting stitches.
So it's like home and family. It continues to grow and evolve, and
yes, that's right.
It's a never-ending thing.
Wow.
That's right. Always growing.
That's really special and beautiful, and thank you for bringing that in to share. I love the analogy too, and I hope the audience can appreciate that. Another part of the show that our audience likes to appreciate is the part where we get to know some of your favorite places in the San Giro Valley.
So Beth, this is the SGV3 part of our program. Why don't you help tell us what are 3 of your favorite places or things to go, or places to go, things to do in the San Gabriel Valley?
Well, my first one was my house, and I'm just so thankful to be there. I call it my promised land, because it was all set for us when we got in there. The Bible talks about when the Israelites went from wandering in the wilderness to their promised land. God told them that they would eat of fruit trees that they didn't plant, and they would live in houses that they didn't build. So when we moved into this house, it was my promised land. We actually have fruit trees in the backyard that we didn't plant, and the house was built just for us. It was constructed by a construction contractor who had 4 children of his own, and he built it for them. But sadly, he wasn't able to finish it, and they had to sell it. So they had to sell it to a company that would flip houses, and so we bought it from that company. But so it was like made just for us. It's 100 years old, over 100 years old, 1915. But he added 4 bedrooms in the basement, so that it fits our family. So it's great.
That's really beautiful. You know, if you think about it, we have never had anybody tell us home is their favorite place.
Yes.
But it just really makes sense, especially in your case. You've really got that home as your central theme. But yeah, that's quite a remarkable thought, actually.
Yes. And the work that she's put in to make it what it is, right? Not just the building, but the family and the environment that it represents.
Yeah. What would be number 2?
And number 2 is right outside
our window here.
Yes, right outside the window here at the Ambassador Auditorium. It's not only a beautiful property with fountains and koi fish, but it's the home of Harvest Rock Church, where we've been part of Harvest Rock Church since 2005, and God has met us there in so many ways and so beautifully, with community, like meeting Russell here, and as a family, and spiritually, the presence of God rests there. So it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, that's another nice pick. I mean, it's like, well, I like it because it's right here. It's right on our grounds, you know. So it's kind of home here. What's number 3?
And number 3, I really like the tea rose garden that Victoria also serves at. And so, yeah, the family there has been very, very open to us, personal. And during the pandemic, they were one of the only places where we could go sit and have a very leisurely tea outside in the wind and the weather for a long time. But it was
That's
beautiful.
right here in Old Pasadena.
Yes.
Again, the name is?
Tea Rose Garden.
Okay, Tea Rose Garden in Old Pasadena.
Where is that located exactly?
On Raymond and somewhere around Holly.
Okay.
Between Holly
So
and
just
Colorado.
north of Colorado?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do they serve there?
Oh, they have seasonal tea services. So we've had fall tea, which has had pumpkin soup and then tea sandwiches and beautiful desserts, and Christmas tea, which had this like peppermint tea with it, spring tea, Valentine's tea. I go about once a month.
Oh my goodness, you've got quite the life. In-N-Out Burger and Tea Rose Garden.
Yes, places where we can take our friends. Uh-huh.
Well, I wish that there was a way to extract all of your knowledge and information, especially with homeschooling, that you could create some sort of resource for parents, to guide them, even just to encourage them and to let them know that they can do this on their own. And you have inspired me to have confidence that my wife and I can do it. My wife has always wanted to homeschool, and she was the one first to mention that to me. And my knee-jerk reaction was, "What about socialization?" But I've overcome that now. So, but Beth, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing all that you know and have done in your life with your family. It's really beautiful.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very, very beautiful presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thanks for the listeners for spending this time with us. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you are considering homeschooling, or if you're on the fence, or you don't know, or if you never even knew that's an option, I would personally recommend exploring it more, because I think beyond just what you can teach them, there's a richness that you have that extra time with them, with your children, and that's really, really special. So thank you.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the SGV Master Key. You can find the full back catalog of the SGV Master Key at sgvmasterkey.com and wherever you get your podcasts. This show was produced and edited by Russell Mono and Victoria Ahlers of Kind Monster Productions. Thanks again for listening or watching. We'll see you again real soon in the next episode.
Nice mother. No, kind mother.